You have tuned in to Scars and Guitars. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. Welcome to the show. Kimmo Kuusniemi. He's the interview subject and he's the fellow at the centre of long-running Finnish outfit Sarcofagus. Now, Sarcofagus are one of the first and most identifiable metal outfits to emerge from Scandinavia. So just think about that for a moment. Scandinavia has given us At the Gates, Opeth, Nightwish, Candlemass, Yngwie Malmsteen, Satyricon, Mayhem, Emperor, Need I continue? Oops, shit. How could I forget? Sorry, my sugar. Okay, the catalyst for the conversation with Kimmo is the news that Sarcofagus are calling it quits. Kimmo talks about this throughout the episode, but before we get to the chat, I thought it would be a nice idea to honour his legacy, so let's take a ride down memory lane. Career milestones. Sarcofagus was the first ever Finnish heavy metal band, and they were also the first to sing in Finnish. They were the first Scandinavian band to release a broadcast-quality, full-length VHS, and the first Finnish metal band to have their very own iPhone app. Kimmo's achievements include hundreds of films, television commercials, and music videos such as this one here that he did for Polish outfit Vader. Along the way, he's filmed many paparazzi-worthy superstars as well. Okay, what follows is by no means a complete snapshot of Kimmo's discography, but it is pretty bloody close. In 1979, Sarcofagus released a split single, Go to Hell and All Those Lies. In 1980, it was a very busy year. 2 albums under the Sarcofagus banner, Cycle of Life and Envoy of Death. Envoy of Death was accompanied by 2 videos, the first of which is Deadly Game, and the second, Insane Rebels. There was a band name change in 1982. The Kimmo Kuusniemi band released Motorbirds, which was accompanied by a full album-length video. Now, Kimmo may not have been aware that a group existed in Canada already called Exciter. Either way, he released a single under that band name called Automania. In 1991, Double Vision was assembled and released a single called Dream On. Fast forward many years to 2007, Sarcofagus Limited released Core Values, which Kimmo considers the band's principal work. Core Values was accompanied by a video, Collateral Damage. In 2008, he released the Promised Land of Heavy Metal International TV documentary. In 2009, an anthology, 1979 to 1982, honouring Sarcofagus. In 2016, the final album from Sarcofagus was released, Back from the Valley of the Kings, which was accompanied by 2 videos, the first of which is Tallow. And the second is called Astral Flyer. Look, there's been a bunch of re-releases along the way too, so if you want the complete picture, go to sarcofagus.com. Now, as a tribute to the fans, Kimmo has pressed a bunch of t-shirts and a poster. You can purchase them from the website as well. Something else, this is the second time that I've had a chat to Kimmo for the show. I interviewed him a few months back about 2 rock tour videos that he put together for Korpiklaani, so check that episode out if you enjoy this conversation. As I said up top, the catalyst for this chat with Kimmo is the news that Sarcofagus is calling it quits. So here he is, Mr. Kimmo Kuusniemi. I can see you. Yeah, I can see you. Yeah. And you're in frame with your videos in the back there, or DVDs, I should say, and your Parker.
No, they're Donald Duck books.
Donald Duck books. My daughters would love them. What does that say? Sorry, that's obviously Finnish.
It says Uhmaike. It's kind of like when you're a teenager and you have to kind of be against everything.
Oh, like a rebel.
Yeah. Yes. And I used to collect them. I stopped some time ago, but the earliest ones are from 76. So
wow, yeah.
In Finland, they are released once a month.
It'd potentially be worth quite a bit then.
It's an interesting story because the kind of like there was a Danish company that bought a publishing company that bought the rights from Disney to Donald Duck, so that they can do their own Donald Duck in Europe. Okay. So all these stories are made in Europe, like Italy, Germany. There's Finnish guys who have been making them. So it's totally different Donald Duck from the one that you know.
Yeah. Well, my kids, the kids these days don't tend to get into a lot of those Disney characters that you and I grew up with. Yeah. You know, Mickey, Donald, Goofy, I think was another one. They get into Pokemon. That's what it looked like to me. That's because the kids are right into Pokemon. So it looked the color scheme with all the yellows in there. I thought for sure.
Yeah.
Similar,
but it is still it's the most read weekly magazine in Finland, the Donald Duck. So it has. Wow. It's like my brother, who is 9 years older than me, and he's a lawyer, or was. He's retired, but he still reads. He gets the Donald Duck. He's for himself. So that's the kind of they are very clever stories because they are kind of like a lot of them are more aimed for adults. So
really?
They kind of reach the whole spectrum, and the new ones. That's why I've been really buying that they have been kind of because of the political correctness and everything. They have been kind of like watered down. But there's like I think from 80s there was a story where Uncle Scrooge was smuggling opium, and so he was a drug smuggler, and he drugged his partner, and they had kind of like spiked these oranges, and he was lucky that his partner had spiked his orange too, but it was smaller, so he woke up before. So these type of stories that you couldn't have anymore. So,
no, I mean, the political correctness thing, we touched on that last time, I think, but you know, with the way it's linked up with COVID and the lockdowns, of course. I just spoke to Simone Simon from Epica before you, and I mentioned that because I mean that band is truly feeling it. They have to be out there. Their crew, you know, they've got a whole ecosystem around them. They're a big band, as you know, and you can't tour, you can't do anything. So this whole industry, the entertainment industry, the live music industry, is just grinding to a halt. But we've got rapid testing units. We actually have them, but they're not. They're saying no. We've got to do the lockdowns, and you can't go out and restaurants. But in California. And I'll ask you about London in the sec, but I know in California it's diabolical. So is it like that in London as well?
Well, I'm of course in the south coast, so I'm not in London. But we
Okay,
all are
yep.
in. We have the highest. We have tiers, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and we are the highest one. And which means that all the shops and pubs and everything is closed, except for the essential shops like supermarkets and things like that. And I think there's a talk that we are going to kind of like a complete lockdown, because it's just kind of like escalating, and because there's this new variation of it which is very easy to get. So I think like London is basically, the hospitals are on the kind of brink of collapsing from the amount of people. So they have to kind of just try to stop it. And it's part of it is that people just are stupid, that if they would not, and especially unfortunately young people who kind of don't care. So they have parties and things, and it's just kind of like, if we would all just kind of keep our distance like the Finns do.
Yeah.
There's a natural distance. You have to be at least 4 meters away from the next person.
Yeah,
there's a joke about it. I don't know if I told the joke about it, that the Finns were relieved that the 2-meter rule has been kind of stopped, and now they can go back to 4 meters. It is true.
That's hilarious.
If you check out like a Finnish bus stop, the people are kind of spread normally, like, they are not close to each other. So,
but I've got to tell you, you notice that when you go to cities like Sydney, and people are so close to you, there's no personal space.
Yeah.
Like these big global cities like London and Sydney, people just don't care. So
no.
they're all about themselves. I'm not saying everybody, but there's that cohort. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a cohort of people that are all about themselves, and I think Sydney, the Premier of New South Wales, has done a great job in keeping things at bay down there, because it's a very multicultural city, Sydney, like London is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't listen. If you understand, like they don't have the ideals of the country in mind. Like they care about their community, but they couldn't give a shit about a lot of other people. And unfortunately, that's the case. That's what a lot of the breakouts in Melbourne were about. But we've been fortunate, I suppose, a bit like Finland, in that we're pretty far away from everybody, and we can lock down our borders overnight, which I think we did. And we haven't had too much. But I mean, look, I haven't had a gig in. I think I mentioned last time I was a musician. I haven't had a gig since February. It's the longest in my life I've gone without playing.
Yeah, no, it is, and of course it's not going away. It's like the whole business will change. It's just like, I think that this is kind of like, in a way, new norm. I'm not saying this what we are now living, but that we cannot have that type of gigantic kind of like gigs and things, and I think that we are kind of going into more something different.
Yeah, I asked Simone about that, and we just don't know. I mean, she was saying that Epica, their next tour is booked for January 2022, so not even this year. And I didn't.
That's quite wise, because.
Yeah, well, they're not going to lose a lot of money on reserving theatres and arenas, because they're at that level. But she also told me, which I didn't know, but Wacken is still scheduled to go ahead. I just don't see how it can, because Germany is under lockdowns as well.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know. I think part of it probably is that because they all, the big festivals, gave the option of moving your ticket to next year. If they would move it 2 years ahead, then people would want their money back. So I don't know. Could be one reason, that they just have to kind of like pretend that it's happening. But of course, it's highly unlikely that any of the big festivals happens this year. So
no, it's I think we're gonna it remains to be seen what happens, but what I feel may happen is that like whole segments of the industry are just going to disappear now, and I think if there is one that is going to disappear, it will be the huge festivals, which I know will affect Europe, because it doesn't affect us here. We've only got one, which is Download, which is the same as the one in the UK. But for that to disappear, and the flow-on effect, and I actually listened to our conversation the last one in preparation for this one here, and we talked about how festivals rely on Slayer and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Metallica.
Yeah,
I don't know whether, I think you'll see a changing of the guard through this process. So there is going to be a yin and a yang, and I don't know whether you remember last time I spoke about how I don't. My own feelings are that you remember when I was a kid and when I was growing up, that was when Megadeth were new. You know, it was the early '90s and Faith No More. So that was the bands of my era. But I see kids wearing those same T-shirts, and they're 14, so the same age I was when I got into it. But that was 30 years ago for me.
Yeah, I know.
And they're
It
still
is what
the
it is.
same band. Yeah, there's just been
Yeah,
no
and
change
it's
in
even,
regard.
but it's even with the just like the kind of rock music and the kind of like what you have called hard rock or whatever from 70s, and you hear them all the time on the radio. It's just like it sometimes feels that surely there is something new to play, or like Bruce Springsteen, that you open the radio, oh, it's Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah,
and it's just kind of like there are other things, but it is, yeah, I don't know, maybe this will, because everything always have good and bad side, so maybe good side is that this might give more space for the smaller bands, because if you have smaller gigs, that's easier to organize. So it might be that it's not that bad that people are focusing into some like Wacken and to see Metallica the 150th time.
Yeah,
maybe it's better that they try to find somebody else to kind of look at, and maybe some of those bands will kind of retire finally. But
I hope they do, mate. You know, I truly hope they do.
They don't need to do it anymore. So
I think Slayer, Kerry King, I've got to hand it to him. I don't like his much prefer Jeff Hanneman's songs in Slayer. But Kerry King, I've got to hand it to him. He knew when the time was done. He knew that they had maybe an album or two in them after Jeff had left.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And I've got to say, I admire that a lot, because he could go and still make a Mozza in a version of the band, which would just be a shadow of its former self. But to your exact point, people would see them for the 150th time. But you might remember, I don't like Metallica that much these days. I wish they.
Yeah. I remember we talked about it.
Yeah,
that was my dirty secret also.
Well, I just hope this is they won't go away because they're the biggest band.
We just hope that Metallica is not listening to this. They might otherwise come and beat us afterwards. Everybody has to like them.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, look, Lars is he's a character to say the least, isn't he? I will say one thing now, though. If James Hetfield ever listens to this, I would love to ghostwrite his autobiography, because I've become a writer since, I think last time I spoke.
Right. Okay, cool.
So instead of going into news media, which is just so far left these days, you have to, in my view, you have to lie, and I'm not going to lie, and you have to like, the news angle always has to be this sort of this lefty thing, which is just bullshit. And you know, you should have a combination of views. That's just how it should be. How it always, wouldn't say it always used to be, but I'd like to see it go that way. But I'm not becoming part of a machine, part of a mechanism that I think is there to fool people and treat people like imbeciles.
I have had to alter, like we probably talked about, what I do quite drastically, because I was kind of like prepared to do kind of like live gig multi-camera things with a little bit different type of twist, so that they would be more affordable than the big raw things, and of course that whole thing went out of the window. So yeah. But then again, the cool thing was that I've been then working full time on this new music video project, and it has actually I've also met a lot of people that are great to work with, and so so it is kind of like one door closes, maybe another one opens. So, and that's how we have to see this. We cannot really just like lie down and wait to die because of COVID. That we have to actually start to innovate and think new ways of doing things. And I think that's this is not going to kill the music and film business. It's just going to change it, and change is something that happens all the time. So it's, I think that's how you're gonna have to see it, that it's not a stopper, it's just a changer.
It is, and I think that dovetails nicely into the reason we can have a chat at the moment, actually, is because one of the things you mentioned right at the end of our last conversation was that you were the fella who started it's not just Scandinavia's, but one of Europe's first genuinely identifiable heavy metal outfits in Sarcofagus. And I don't think I think it's fair to say that, because I had a listen. I got Spotify, so I was able. Your music isn't on Apple or iMusic or whatever it's called, Australia, but it is on Spotify. So
all right, yeah, I
which
think
is
it's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, Apple's funny the way that they do things. I said I use iTunes. I think that's what Apple Music is what it's called. Sorry, Apple Music. I do use it, but like
Yeah, that's my main. I use Apple Music.
but we don't get a lot down here. I don't know whether it's a territory thing. Like for example, speaking to Scott Ian from Anthrax, there's quite a few of their albums aren't on there, including Still 2, which is my favorite of theirs. So I'd like to listen to that occasionally, but I've got to go to, I don't even know if it's on Spotify, to be honest, but just, I had to bounce the CD, had to find the CD in a storage room somewhere that I had because I bought it back in the day and bounce it onto iTunes to listen to it. But either way, Sarcofagus isn't there, but it's on Spotify, and it looks like it's all there too. So there's a great selection of material on there, but you've decided that that's enough. You want to put the guitar
because I think the one of these traps that you can fall into with this old band is that like Sarcofagus is like a cult band. Yeah. It's not like any kind of mainstream or that it's just a cult band that people know. And with the cult bands, the problem is that the kind of like the fans, it's like the kind of like the first 3 albums are the ones that they love. And whatever you do after that, it's not, they just want you to repeat. But of course, what would you repeat what you've already done? So it's kind of like, then you fall into that trap that then you kind of, in a bizarre way, you, even if you don't think like that, but you kind of like try to please the people. And then you might get stuck with stuff where you should be actually doing something totally different. And I think that because Sarcofagus, I buried it 1981 or 1982 after the 3 albums that came out in basically 2 years' time, all the 3 albums. And then there was the 4th one that was released later, but not at that time, the first one. And back then it was just kind of like, I just realized that okay, the Motorbirds, the last album, I had like a session band in it. So it wasn't, that was also quite radical because of course at that time metal bands and bands in general had to be real. They had to be living their life. If you like, we went to gigs and we went like without our leather jackets and everything, and we had to start to wear what we wear on the stage from the kind of like when we left home, because otherwise we were fakes. And that was kind of bizarre because it of course it's a show. It's not, it doesn't mean that you are like you are on the stage. So basically that kind of like the Motorbirds, because it was a session album, because I wanted to have the best musicians I could to make the best possible album I can at that time. And of course I achieved it, but that band wasn't really meant to be kicking or anything. So unless there would be something big happening. But I was kind of like so much ahead of time that there was nobody to take a band like Sarcofagus, like a kind of like a metal band out of Finland. There had been some progressive bands that had been even like, in 70s, there's a Tasavallan Presidentti and Vikram, which are great bands, and our keyboard player has played in both of them. and they actually have been outside Finland, but it just didn't work. So they didn't get anywhere, but they actually were I think they were a month in London waiting for things to happen, and nothing really happened. And so it kind of faded away. But bizarrely, like when I had just finished the Motorbirds video, I met a guy at the Hannu Ström, I think his name was, at the same, it was like kind of like a cable TV studio. And he had just made a couple of videos for Hanoi Rocks. Okay. And then there was the Westerinen, who was a manager. And he was the first one who actually had the kind of ability to take a band and make it to something. And that's what happened to Hanoi Rock. So it kind of like, he was the first one, and that was just when I ended, when I decided that this is I retire and start to make films. And so after Hanorox was like, but then it took still time before Finnish bands could actually, especially metal bands, could actually kind of get out. And I think it was like 1988 Stone was the one that really changed the Finnish metal scene, that suddenly it was seen as that, because before that also the Finnish audiences were thinking that metal is kind of like it has to be American or English band, that Finnish bands cannot really play, which was of course very stupid way of seeing it, but how you cannot do anything with that. And I know that there's a band called Tarot, which you might know.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, they have done quite well. And yeah, the bass player is in Nightwish. What's his name? Marko Hietola.
Yeah, the singer. Yeah, you can sing. You can sing really well as well.
Yes, he's a very good singer. Yeah. He's a lovely guy also. And they had exactly the same problem. And I think their first album came out 84, 85. Because I actually used it in my first TV series, their music, because I thought that it's good and I wanted to help them to get them on the TV. And but I remember they had interviews where they were talking about the same problem, that they are not taken seriously because it's a Finnish band. And they were a great band. They played well. There was nothing wrong with them. So it was just the audience was wrong. So it was kind of, so I was quite proud of the thing that I was able to, as whatever I was 23, 24, that I was able to decide that my life passion, that I had to put it away, that I could just make another album, but that would be just kind of like, at that point, it looked like you would be just repeating what you already done.
Yeah.
So then I wanted to do something else. And of course, filmmaking is in my life, so it was the right decision.
Yeah, so effectively, your life's work is your filmmaking, which is what you're well known for. But this has been, Sarcofagus has been like a passion project. You know, you got in on the ground floor. You're the first Finnish metal band, and first Scandinavian metal band. And just with the perception of things there, you know, people weren't necessarily supporting you in the way that they were supporting some pretty ordinary British and American bands. And it sort of marginalised the band a little bit, but you kept on going, and you've got a decent body of work there now, and you've got fans all over the world.
Yes, and it was also the beginning was quite bizarre, because I think I always had this, because I've done a lot of TV commercial and advertisement, but I have this kind of marketing head. So that's why we kind of like, we took the photos in graveyards, and we were having makeup, and we had the kind of looks of something different. And I was very, it was kind of like when we were talking about old bands, that they kind of became something by just kicking. I actually managed to make Sarcofagus kind of like rise up, because I just was relentless with the media, that I was knocking at every possible newspaper and magazine with set of photos, ready-made story.
Oh, wow.
And they kind of like, because I didn't look like metal life, because I was like just my normal self. And I think that it was just like, you know, that they thought that I'm weird, but I'm kind of nice. And that's the way we got hell of a lot of publicity. So there's always been the kind of weird, like even some of the universities kind of papers that they interviewed me for, how was the music here. They have been trying to make me say that the media was against us, but it was the audience that wasn't in our favor. Media was with us. We got hell of a lot of publicity, because I'm planning to at some point release, because I have like a lot of audio interviews from radio from the time, which is really good for the Finns to see, because then from those you actually see what type of the situation was. That the radio reporters wanted to argue with me about metal, because they were kind of like seeing it as some kind of like you know, kind of like a hillbilly music, you know, that it's for idiots, and they were trying to argue with me about that, and I was able always to counter argue about it. So I think that they found it very amusing. So we got a lot of radio play. I was in every possible TV, which were very kind of few apart, TV program, and even the Finnish main TV did like 2 songs from the Envoy of Death. Okay. And it was the biggest production that they ever done in music videos. And they were very excited because it was something they never done before. We had the flame throwing guitar and
I saw your video.
They are online, the videos, so you can see them. Now they don't look anything, but at that time they were quite radical. Yeah. And so in a way, like, you know, because of me being kind of relentless about bugging people and in a nice way. And that's how we got a lot of publicity. And so in a way but it didn't kind of like turn into selling albums. So it's one of those things. And of course, in a way, the old Sarcofagus albums did sell well if you compare to modern day numbers. But at that time, the numbers were much bigger. They were kind of, vinyls were selling much better than now. So you know what I say, that it's kind of
if you had an album that you thought was the best representation of the group, would it be Cycle of Life or Envoy of Death, do you think, or Motorbirds? I think is Motorbirds.
No, of course, for me, the most important album is the Core Values that came out 2007.
Oh, that's a later one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, you haven't heard that one.
I have. Yeah, I made a point of listening to. Oh no! I'll just check.
Yeah.
I think it's.
Well, that's of course for me, because that combines the past and it also has the future. So it's kind of like, I think it had brilliant reviews because none of the reviewers were able to kind of define what it is. Like there's some, like the one who said that after the 10th time, it's easier to say what it. How did it go? That after 10 times, it's easier to say what it isn't than what it is.
Oh, really? Is that how people were approaching it? They were saying what it
yes,
wasn't.
And there was a guy that I know it's a big Sarcofagus fan who runs one of the magazines, and he told me, because I said I was quite surprised that you didn't review the album, and he said that we had the album in the kind of like office, and he was going from guy to guy, but nobody knew what to say about it. And I thought that's awesome. If you manage to make an album that people don't know what to say about, that's goal kind of like achieved. So but the Core Values were problematic in a way because I was working on the biggest international TV series I've ever done. So I didn't have time to kind of put any time on it, like, you know, getting it out and whatever. So we gave it to a guy who we all have known since 70s. And that's a little label. And he was saying, well, I have all the connections everywhere and I can do this and I can do that. And he did nothing. He just kind of like, there was one ad, which was this size. And it was just because one of the biggest music magazines had a big story about the band. But like it's nowadays, they were saying that, well, you should actually advertise so that we can put the whole story out. And we were going to think, well, of course we have to. And then we got this tiny thing. And then the kind of like the whole article was truncated because it wasn't enough.
Jeez, yeah.
So
it's interesting. Yeah. It's
interesting. But in a way, like if we go to the back, I think that the Motorbirds, of course, is the main album because that still sounds good, which is quite an achievement considering it was done 81. That it still sounds like metal, that it has the kind of like still the essence of it. And,
it sounds like
the songs were.
Yeah, it's kind of, some of it sounds a bit like Bathery. You know, you've got that picking technique you've got, which then, of course, appeared in Immortal a bit later on. So that's when I talk about identifiable characteristics of metal. That's what I'm talking about. So you don't sound like Black Sabbath. It's a vastly different beast. You're probably closer to Michael Schenker than you are to Black Sabbath, but it has all of these elements, these characteristics that, as I say, you can hear in extreme metal these days. So that's why I said I think you could claim to be one of the first heavy metal outfits to come out of Europe because
Mm.
you know I could hear a bit of Candlemass too. You know, you got that is because he's not doom at all, but there's a few things going on there. It's quite a unique and original sound. I've got to hand it to you.
Mm.
I thought it might have sounded because I hadn't heard it up until went for a dive on Spotify, and I thought it might have sounded, you know, stuff from the 70s is dated. There's no two ways about it. Unless you're Richie Blackmore or what have you and you wrote the book, it all sort of sounds a bit, it can sound a bit thin, but yours doesn't.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say it unless I just wouldn't say anything, you know, or if, but I could definitely hear these things that I'm mentioning. So I often wonder, I was wondering when I was listening back to it, did Cawthorne actually hear you? Because is that where they get? Because very few ideas are spontaneous. They all come from somewhere else.
Well, there's always been these kind of like people saying that and this and that band have been listening to us, and that's why they sound like that. And in a way, it was quite bizarre because there wasn't any way out of Finland. But with the vinyls, they were actually kind of like. There was in USA, they had the college radio, and they were actually playing them. So there was kind of like, for the vinyls, I think it was a Swedish label that took quite a lot of them and sold them globally. So even if the band couldn't go gigging anywhere, the music went out. So they all were kind of like, they were there. So you could have heard of the band. And with the Motorbirds, there was like Holland, they were really excited about it, but they were waiting for the English version because, of course, now the Finnish language is not the problem, but because it was done in Finnish at that time, that was what the hell is that language? So they liked the album, but they were waiting for the English version, and I think that was one of those things that for me was one of the last nails in the coffin, that I thought that, well, fuck, I'm not going to do an English version of it. I've just done a year making the videos, doing everything, so I'm not just, forget it.
Just talking about Sarcofagus again. So have you got a release planned? I know you've got the nice T-shirt you've got there on. Actually, that's for sale on your website. So
yeah, and the poster.
People can get that, and they can get the poster as well. So that's the capstone, is it? So you got the poster and the T-shirt. Are you doing an anthology on CD or anything like that for fans?
There's coming a compact cassette of all the things. Because this is kind of like this is on the Spotify and whatever.
Got my cassette player here.
Yeah, so it's basically, it is kind of like the original single, the first single. And then we got together 2008 with the original singer Hannu, who has the band Havana Blacks and so on, and we redid the single A side, the Call to Hell, and then we did another song, and so the compact cassette is actually kind of like the last single of coming out of Sarcofagus. So it's kind of like the first album was The Cycle of Life, so this is kind of like nicely kind of, we have the original single, then we have the latest and last single, and with almost the same lineup. So it's kind of, so it's nice, because that was supposed to be an album cover, because I was working on the Absence of Light, but like I said, that it was November 2019 that I actually made the video for Core Values that I was talking about at the time, that the world is so dark and and gloomy and nothing like the Core Values when I re-released it last year, but it was done 2004, and it was about all these things that are wrong in the world. It was very kind of like socially aware album, and you kind of like think that nothing has changed, and I've done a lot of environmental stuff also. In the 80s, I did a lot of environmental films. I did 91. I did with the name Double Vision, Dream On, which was like a music video that was donated to World Wide Fund for Nature, and it was the first Finnish music project ever to make the music TV, MTV. And so it was quite a big thing.
Yeah.
And it cost a hell of a lot of money. And it was about exactly the same things that was 91, that we are still talking, and nothing changes. So at some point you kind of think that why, it's just kind of like the lyrics, I'm fed up with them because it don't mean anything. It's just kind of the same yappity yap and trying to be dramatic and trying to put kind of like the world right. And music, it's entertainment. It's not going to change change a lot of things. So at least I kind of, it doesn't, I'm not saying that I've given up with the humankind or anything, but it's just kind of like maybe
I'm feeling it, don't worry.
Maybe the change will come from somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, you've touched on a subject there I could talk about for hours, because I was just talking to my wife. I think I love doing these exchanges here, but in terms of the day-to-day, I feel like I'm done with humanity. I'm just at a point personally where I'm just, I've had someone in the last few years try to rip me off out of $50,000. There was problems in my own family many years ago that forced me to confront this reality. And it made me sort of think, I'm now 42. So when I was growing up, I thought, well, you figure out the world a lot more and your place in it, and therefore it gets easier. And I do think it gets easier with age, but only because you got wisdom. Those of us with a brain, of course, you get more wisdom and you become wise about how to approach different things and who to avoid, this sort of thing. But I'm just fast getting to a point where I don't care that much anymore. Meaning that especially and I think part of it for me has come about because I sense this magnificent opportunity I've got to ghostwrite these biographies of people like Pete and all these wonderful stories that need to be told. I'm certainly not saying like you, man. I'm certainly not saying I can't stand humanity and can't be around it anymore. But I'm at a point now where if I was left alone to write my books, which I basically am, 12 to 16 hours a day, I'm good. I don't need more than that. I don't wish to sort of, no more networking events, no more. I used to be a Toastmaster. I'm not doing that anymore. And maybe it'll come full cycle, it'll be a cyclical and I'll come out the other side of it. But you're right, mate. And then since we've last spoken, there was the US presidential elections and, over 71 million people who voted for Trump are automatically racist. They don't have any legitimate gripes for which are the reasons that they vote for him. And you just see the way the media, again, why I'm not going into media myself as a profession. You see the way that the media treat a whole segment of the population globally, not just in America, but globally, because we have to follow American politics because of its impact on global social and political matters. But you start to, and then you dive into history. Like there's this wonderful anthropologist called Robert Sepper, who's an American gent, and he uncovers a lot of stuff. And then I read... it wasn't through him necessarily, but I sort of started to get put on to, it was through him actually, the causing factors behind World War II. And a lot of what we've been taught is just bullshit. So in other words, history is just an invention of the victor. As in what we know about history is just an invention of the victor. It's not actually how it occurred. And then there's these, have you seen there's these hieroglyphs in Egypt that look like someone's got a big rock and just try to scratch them off? Well, that was the preceding pharaoh trying to erase the memory of the pharaoh that came before him. It turns out we've always been like this.
Yeah, also the history, if we talk about like Egypt, that we actually don't know how old the pyramids are or the Sphinx, because there isn't anything to date them. And if there's kind of any writing, that's like later. And I think the Great Pyramid actually had some writing on somewhere in the inside, and that was actually, I think it turned out to be an English guy who wanted to just kind of like, I don't know why, but he wanted to kind of fake it so that it would be dated and it could be.
Oh, right. Okay. Claimed. Fake it. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate this story is, but that's what I've read. So I like I said, I was very into it. long time ago. I still, of course, like it, but I'm not reading anymore that much about it. So,
Yeah. Well, you can go down. I think it's hard to find people who just present the data. You understand? Like, there's always this angle.
Yes, and how do you verify need data? It's just,
great point.
It's just kind of like, I think we were talking about this last time that like with the filmmaking, I've been traveling the world and being in weird places, and like with Korpikan in Russia, that's actually where you see how it is.
Yes.
If you kind of read it here, Russia is falling apart and it's horrible and everything. It wasn't horrible. It was actually like Siberia was a really lovely place and lovely people and so it is. Yes, the information is very hard to actual information very hard to get, and sometimes you actually, it doesn't even if you go somewhere, you still might not get, like, you just get a slice of the actual reality, but it's better than reading about it. So yeah,
your trip to Russia occurred when Russia was being demonized in the US, at least, well, pretty much globally, really, with all of these left-leaning media outlets, which is just about all of them these days, of course. But of course, Russia was responsible for Trump getting into power. It was a Russian collusion, and it was never proven, But your documentary was a wonderful insight from the perspective that, to your exact point there, you're meeting people, and you can't speak the language either, so they can't speak English or Finnish either. So you weren't able to communicate, but you were able to interact with these people, and there was the indigenous group that you went out to see. And I loved how you explained how you tried to give them money, or you tried to work out exactly how you could pay for the experience. They said, "Oh, we don't want money." They were happy just to have you, like, they're outside of this Western or neo-capitalist environment that you and I have been a part of ever since we were born. There are groups of people that have managed to exchange ideas and welcome people into their homes without the use of any of that. And I guess the trade-off is that they want to share their culture.
Yeah.
So but yeah, it's made it's at the moment people say we live through interesting times. I always say they're interesting times because there's always interesting things happening, meaning that there's always some bullshit going on somewhere. And and I think that's why music is so important, because it gives people some, music is an invention. It's a creative thing, but it gives people something to grab onto when life doesn't make sense. And I know I've done it.
And it is kind of maybe like I said, 2019, I did say that maybe we should start to do happy metal because the times are so dark. But of course, you cannot really make happy metal because metal has to be kind of like dark. So, but then you can do it without the lyrics. So then it's a bit different story.
Well, one of the best albums that I heard last year came out of Finland. It was by a group called Oranssi Pazuzu, which I think means orange.
Yeah, I know the name. I've never heard anything from them because they are from Svart Records. They same that re-released our vinyl, and I think it's their brand. Yeah. So it's been around for quite a long time now, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. So they're with Nuclear Blast now. So their last album, the album that I got, was through Nuclear Blast. But yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. They've had a whole career up to this point, but that was extraordinarily weird music. But I found it was like a Stanley Kubrick film, in that they're very, it's weird to watch it, and you sort of got to take a lot in, but you're intrigued and you're absorbed by it.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see there's a label called Sentient Ruin who does a lot of interesting things too. There's another band called Plague Organ, and they don't sound alike, but it hits you the same way. And I'm noticing, and I'm plugged into the music scene, but I'm noticing that there are some very strange, but at the same time, very engaging releases starting to come out, particularly out of Europe at the moment. And that's a reaction, I think.
Yeah, I think that, like, if I kind of feel like doing something else, and it doesn't mean that because of course, like, because the thing that most people don't really know is that the kind of like the film music side of me, that I've been actually making film music for 36 years. And film music is really great because you have to do whatever fits the film. So it's not about your music taste. It's about making music which is commercial, purely commercial. And you make it, and then you have people who instantly like it. And of course, some of the tunes that I have made for TV commercial have been probably heard more than any of the Sarcofagus stuff. So they have had more airplay. But nobody, of course, knows that I've done them. That's not the point. The point is that film music is great because it expands your horizon, so that you kind of start to see, because you cannot just dislike music because, like, I don't like that type of music, because I've been doing like film music, all kind of stuff, like, from some strange disco music to whatever. and that's kind of like makes you actually a much better musician because your repertoire is much larger. And of course, that's what I've been kind of like wanting to do, is to kind of like, and also because with film music, of course, I play all the instruments. So it's not just the guitar, that it's kind of everything. So that's kind of like I think that I should have buried Sarcofagus earlier and just kind of go that way and not try to kind of navigate, because it of course it's not, it's just more like, that the Sarcofagus has been like this little thing in your head that is messing with you,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
blurring what you are doing. And in a way, when you were talking about the albums that I like, that of course, also an album that I like is the Back from the Valley of the Kings, which is the 2016 release. Okay. That in 2010 we had kind of like a comeback tour, and we rehearsed like properly with the whole band once. Then we had 3 gigs, and I kind of thought about it, that this is brilliant, that it's going so well that I suggested to the other guys that, what about if we go to Esa's, the keyboard player, studio and record this whole set in one day? And because that's like the Cycle of Life was done in, I think, 2 or 3 days. So it's kind of like albums used to be done. There wasn't time. It was just played. And of course, nowadays people, because you have home studios, you can work there, then you can go to a studio, continue and whatever. So you can spend a hell of a lot of time on them. So that was the kind of like interesting concept that everybody loved the idea. That's a brilliant idea. And so we did record it in a very, very long day. And we had all kind of problems, like the Hammond Leslie speakers kind of blew up and we had to kind of improvise and all kind of things. But the idea with that was that because like Motorbirds, like I said, I wouldn't redo it. I think it's perfect still in my mind, like, considering the time or whatever, and it still sounds good. But Cycle Life and Envoy of Death, to me, they both had good songs. But because there wasn't because you have to kind of also remember that like when we recorded Cycle of Life, nobody knew how to record heavy metal.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, in a way, it wasn't even invented, and it was heavy rock, which is very different. Like, it's heavy rock is kind of like, and hard rock nowadays, they kind of blend. There isn't any clear kind of like definition. So it's kind of like in the 2 years time, if you think about from Cycle of Life, that the sounds are very kind of like, it's still a mixture of rock and whatever, progressive and blues and stuff like that. And then Envoy of Death was already more metal structured album, and it already had now, like, the stereo guitars to make it kind of like a wall. And but it was still, it didn't have that type of kick in it. It was still, like you said about Deep Purples and all those bands, that now they sound very kind of thin. And Envoy of Death was like from the song point of view, that because I've never been a big fan of Iron Maiden, for example, because I always been thinking that Iron Maiden is quite happy band, that everything is kind of like and Judas Priest, I've liked the earlier stuff, but they are kind of, again, they are not really that dark. You know what I'm saying? That they was their album called Sad Wings of Destiny. Yeah, that was a good album. I think that's their best album, and that was kind of like, to me, darker album. And then they became more, I wouldn't say poppy, but you know that they are a bit. Judas Priest is a little bit like the Beatles of heavy metal.
Yeah,
that they kind of come with up these great tunes and songs, and like Reaper and all these. They're brilliant songs, very catchy and but I think with the Envoy of Death, it was already going into the dark side, which a lot of, at that point, the bands that I was listening were kind of like quite happy bands, like that Van Halen's and all that stuff. They went trying to be like, you know, metal. And so in a way, because of course, like my influences came from bands like Edgar Broughton band. Vasa was a brilliant album. It's very kind of strange, in your face, aggressive, not kind of like some kind of weird proto metal type of album. It's not metal, but you can kind of think that if you listen to that, you can get the ideas of making metal. And then there was a band called Sir Lord Baltimore with the Kingdom Come album, which is again already is metal, and that was done like, was it 68? And of course Alice Cooper's Killer album, which is quite like, you know, heavy in a feeling way, not like, you know,
getting that way. Yeah. What about
Blue so
Cheer?
That's kind of like, sorry.
Were you a fan of Blue Cheer at all? You know the band Blue Cheer? They're called Blue Cheer from San Francisco. If you haven't heard. Yeah, if you have a listen to them, they're from the mid '60s. And their early stuff is heavier than Sabbath. And they but you know, they didn't have the vibe, I've got to say, but they definitely, the guitars were chunky, you know, a lot of down picking and stuff. And that was the first time that I heard it. But yeah, I understand your point. It's, you know, a lot of these bands, and I think that's what Metallica picked up on as well, even though they were inspired by a lot of these bands. And
because there was this psychedelia and progressive and like, you know, like heavy rock and so there were the elements, and I think like the Envoy of Death was coming from that I wanted to make kind of like a dark album, and it is quite dark, especially like the Black Contract, which again is probably quite ahead of time, because it is quite like, I don't know what it is, but it's very doomy.
Black Contract, there you go, 10 minutes, 9 minutes 29, there you go, it's a long song.
So but that also had the kind of like, you know, my progressive background, because I played a lot of progressive music before Sarcofagus. So of course, like everything has roots, but I think that these roots that I had made it kind of like that in that way we were ahead of time, making kind of like darker music, darker riff based music. So
and you had,
but then if I because I always drift with these stories that are going to a tangent.
That's fine.
But
go for it.
But the reason, like, you know, like when the band came back because of the internet, and suddenly like there was a lot of like talk about how great and blah blah blah, and I always had the idea that it would be so great to redo Cycle of Life and Envoy of Death albums. And so in a way that 2010, when we had the gigs, went to studio, recorded them, recorded all the best songs from the 3 albums, because that was the set list that we were playing. And then the actual recording only took 1 day, but the actual mixing, it probably took more than anything I ever mixed time-wise, because I had to kind of like, because the sounds had to be created afterwards. I couldn't have them in the studio. So I was trying not to do it into a modern metal album. I was trying to do it in the 70s way. That's why I thought that playing them in studio would give the feel, because it would be more live. It wouldn't be kind of like, where we repeat until everything is exactly perfect.
Yeah.
So in a way, like, getting the sound right was a hell of a job. And I think that it sounds now that it's kind of like 70s or 80s, but early 80s, 70s, but with the kind of band that actually was so much better than the band back then. And the sounds are, of course, much better, but still not being kind of like metal, that is actually whatever it was back then.
Yeah.
So there are 3 songs that we did with some other guys, and they were done in a metal way. So the 3 last songs are not done in the same way as the rest of the album. So, but I think that was great, because that was one of my wishes, was to kind of redo some of the old songs that I thought were really good, but the recording into my ears wasn't the best possible one. I know that there's people who will say that of course the original ones were the best, naturally. You cannot improve that. Yeah.
Has somebody like Digby or Brian Slagle ever reached out to you?
Sorry?
Someone like Digby, Digby from Earache, or Brian Slagle?
I've been working with Earache.
But you
a
I
music video.
Yeah, music. I remember the story, but what about the Sarcophago though? Did they sort of twig that you were the
Well, let's put it this way: that if they would have, I would never even reply to email.
Yeah. The amount of stories that I've heard, the amount of first-hand stories from musicians,
and I think there's much more stories than you have heard. So it is.
There's
a funny story. There's a funny story about there's an Italian label. I don't know if they still exist. Italian label called Mellotron, and they released these Psycho Life and Envoy Death as CDs. They were the first in 90s releases.
Okay.
And re-releases, and of course they released them without talking to me or asking for a license to do
As
that.
they do.
But it doesn't matter. But then when the Core Values was coming out, they were really, really excited about it. And so they were kind of like, oh, this is pretty good. We want to put it out, and we are so keen. And when the album was done, and I was really kind of like that, this is absolutely brilliant, that I'm so happy about this. And I sent it to them, and their reply was that this is absolutely awful. You cannot do this type of album, which was kind of like, I was kind of like, what? You are telling me that I cannot, with my band, do an album that I want to do. And so we ended up having this argument, because they were actually expecting that I would do something like Envoy Death and Cycle Life with those sounds, that I would just kind of like continue, like, because they probably haven't even been listening to Motorbird, so they didn't even know that I had already then moved on from that.
Oh God!
So it was so funny. It was so funny, kind of like emailing about it, that they are trying to tell me that I cannot do it. And of course, yes, I haven't heard from them since. I think I wrote them quite precise email about what I can do and I cannot do, and what they can do and cannot do. So
So you've had to do everything independently.
Well, this is a bit kind of like, the new project is not going to be. It's too big. It's too complex, and so yes. So that's a bit different. But I think that for most of the bands, that if you do your album and you are not like, expecting it to sell like hotcakes, it's much better to do it yourself and just get it done if you can, because the labels are not really doing anything anymore. You don't really need a label.
Remember we spoke.
They have the PR power. That's the only thing that they have their emailing list, that they can get the information to more people than maybe you can. But does it do anything?
But if you're working with Tara and then you work with people like Earsplit PR in the United States, it reaches the same audience anyway for a fraction of the price, and you're not in debt to the label. Yeah, I think even with indie labels like your Earaches and stuff. I mean, Earache these days, they're a rock label. Can you believe that? The bands that they've signed.
All right. I haven't
like,
really followed them at all for a long time. But yeah.
They've ditched, as far as I can see, they've ditched extreme metal. So they do. The drummer from Dream Theater, what's his name? Mike Portnoy, isn't it? Is that his name? Yeah, his son has got a band called Taller, I think it is. And it's just to me, it sounds like a cross between or some extreme metal stuff, but more new metal, Corns, that sort of thing. Kind of got that vibe going on. So they're probably, which is interesting because extreme metal has never sold in big volumes, but it's selling more now than I think it ever has. And I do get access to some data, and I can see we're not talking great numbers, a couple of thousand or what have you. But in terms of compared to a lot of these pop artists, they're only selling, like, remember Robin Thicke? Remember that guy who sang, what's that song that he sang? I used to play it in covers bands all the time. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, he released an album. He had a number one album beforehand, I think it was. Definite number one on some charts anyway. And it didn't sell more than a couple of 100 copies, this follow-up album. And it happens. It happens even if you've got the big machine behind you, because as soon as people stop caring, they don't care. They've tuned out. And I'm having to, so I'm starting a residency in the Queensland State Library in March to help me write. And I won that. Thank God I got it, because it's something that I didn't get taught how to write a book at uni. So I'm going to have to do it this way. And eventually I'll do my Master of Letters, as part of this process as well. Is that there's all these opportunities for us to interact and to communicate with people one-on-one. You don't need all of these gatekeepers anymore.
No. And it is kind of like with the music, it's so great that you can work with people wherever they are. It's like, with this new project I have, the Siberian musicians who have been sending me songs, and there's a guy in California that I'm working with, and it's just, so we don't really, people are accessible, and also even with the project you don't need the studio anymore. You have a proper computer and stuff, you can do whatever. So in a way, yes, that's the kind of good side, that we are so much more self-sufficient, that if you think about like the Sarcofagus albums in the 80s, that they required a studio, even however little time you had, and it cost a lot of money. And then kind of like doing the actual vinyls, you couldn't have done it yourself unless you are a very wealthy person. So the step of getting anything out was like this. Whereas now it's really kind of, if you know what you're doing, you can just do it yourself. Of course, the problem is that a lot of people don't know how to do things. So that's more like the surprising thing, that what I find is that like mastering your music, that should be something that you would naturally, in my mind, you would naturally learn. But a lot of people don't do it. So they use outside mastering companies, and that will automatically affect the outcome, that is not the best one, because the mastering always changes the mix, the balances and everything. So you like I've mastered things 15 times, because I listen, that changed, and then you go back to the mix and you mix it, and then you master it again, and so it's not, to me it's one process, but I know that a lot of people don't do it, which I don't understand, but yeah.
Well, I think you're a self-starter, though. That's the thing. I think we've both got that in common, is that we want to do everything ourselves, and we're prepared to put the time in. And I've
done it for a long time also. So that in the time when I started to do, you really needed to know how to do things, because you actually, like with the Motorpads, I actually learned to be a studio engineer, because that was the only way to do it, because I couldn't hire anybody to do it, because I was working on it in the off time from the normal studio time. So it was nights and weekends, and it took a lot of time. So to make it like it is, that was the only way to do it. And it's the same with the film, that to make big films, like I did some very interesting films in Finland. The only way to do it was that I know everything, that I actually can do it myself. And back in the day, there was the saying that you cannot do everything yourself, that nobody can do everything. You have to focus on one tiny part, which is just crap, because of course nowadays that's the norm. That's what we all are teaching to everybody, that you have to learn everything yourself so that you can do. But that was in the 80s. That was kind of, with the filmmaking, it was a no-go area, that you cannot be a director, cameraman, editor. That somehow, for example, director, editor, you cannot edit your own stuff, which is like, why couldn't you? It's just stupid. But it was just how the whole business was working. It was very divided into slots that people were part of. And of course now most of these people are not in the business anymore, because there isn't room for one slot. You have to be multi-skilled.
You know, I'm drawn to a comment that Rob Zombie shared with Jamie Jaster on his podcast. You know, Rob Zombie, of course, you know, the former White Zombie frontman and the filmmaker. He's a filmmaker, he said, and it resonated with me so much at the time, and it's actually something I've adopted in my own professional practices. He said, if you need to ask for advice, you're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. Figure it out. Get it done yourself. All of the tools are available to you. And because he's talking about, you know, a lot of it's a lot of criticism for his films, and he basically said he doesn't give a shit. I think fair call, great. I mean, he's got I like his films, actually. I like the way he's tapping into a lot of that 70s and 80s vibe and bringing it into the modern screen. But I thought that was so true, that if you've got to ask, and if you've got to go and seek advice, and if you need to rely on other people to get things done, it ain't going to happen. You've just got to work out, I think, the limitations of your talent, meaning that, like, so for example, I can literally write and publish an ebook right here on my Mac that I'm talking to you over right now. I don't need to go anywhere else. I mean, there's enough online publishing tools to help me get everything done. You know, I can use Illustrator, I can use Photoshop, I can put together videos using Premiere Pro, because I use the Adobe suite with those products there. But it's just I think, I know for me, because I had a whole career in a telecommunications company before I started to go on this pathway that I'm on now. And I think, particularly for me, I'm not technical at all. I volunteer that now. I'm creative, but I'm not technical. And it takes me a long time to sort of get my head around things when there's a big instruction manual. It takes me, I oftentimes just throw out the instruction manual and just try to figure it out, you know. But these days, all of these programs that I just mentioned, and also Google might be the evil empire, but I've got to tell you, Google Docs has just been a game changer for me, because I can share documents across multiple devices when I'm writing. So I can write a lot of my writing actually doing my iPhone, because it reads better that way. It's believe it or not, you read things differently on your iPhone, and when you're writing, that is, your creativity it manifests differently when you're writing on your iPhone compared to when you're writing on a big screen like a Mac or thereabouts. But I guess my point is that I think technology finally allowed somebody like myself, who isn't technical, to feel like I had all of these tools at my fingertips that could get what I wanted done just with me. Just alluding to what we spoke about earlier, I'm sort of not a fan of humanity at the moment, so I don't really want to work with other people. I just want to do everything myself where I can.
Well, this is kind of like also like with the new project that I am working with people, but there is the kind of like I don't have any like proper heavy metal singers on this new stuff. I have very different type of singers, and it's just because I'm quite fed up with the heavy metal singers, because they are quite hard to work with, because they all are, you know,
prima donnas.
Yes, and it's just kind of like you're kind of, would I like to go through all this kind of like the lyrics and making them fit and you know, it's just kind of like, so there's a part of it also of that in my decision that I want to do something different. So yeah, it is kind of like.
Yeah, there's something in that what you're talking about, because I think I've said this a couple of times on the podcast, but I'll say it now. I'm no longer interviewing local Australian metal bands, basically for the reason that we just mentioned. I get, yeah. I mean, I feel I'm not saying I'm doing them a favor by interviewing them, but if you've got a couple of hundred Facebook followers or what have you, and you haven't made an impact, and then I do the podcast and then we release it, and I can see the comments that they're talking about on the, I just go and check and see where it's been shared, and just for curiosity's sake, I don't do it anymore. But I can see the comments that are made, and some of them are quite disparaging about me and my interview technique or what have you. And it hasn't. I'm not saying it's happened often. I'm saying it's happened a couple of times. That's all. But I just know. I think, bugger this. Who cares? Like, if I get to talk to people like yourself, or as I say, Simone just before you, and these interactions are lovely. These are fantastic. They make me feel fulfilled, is the way that I term it. And then I talk to these local yokels, and there's definitely an element of disrespect there, and I just think, fuck you guys.
But that's the internet problem, that everybody can be a critic, and it's so easy because you just type in whatever, and there's all the kind of like, there's people who are jealous, and so it is kind of like I've with some of the films and things that I've been putting out, I've turned off the comments because I really don't want to listen to it. Why? It's just kind of like with Sarcofagus, it's always it's being kind of 99% everything with Sarcofagus is positive.
Yeah, I saw that.
There isn't really any negative coming. Like, of course, there are people who don't like and whatever, but I think that they just don't go that way to tell it to anybody. So that's been always quite nice with it, that it's always has always been positive. So that's one of these good things about it. And but yeah, but it's also like, I think that with the whole metal thing is that there isn't. Because I've always tried to find new music to listen, and there isn't really, for very, very long time, there hasn't been anything interesting in kind of like metal happening. It's just like, same stuff that has been around for a long time. It might be better played or something, but it's not. And also this I do like bands like Mesuka and there's what the hell is that? There's a Finnish band that I just I just somehow found them. And
are they new? Obviously they're a new band, but have they had an album out recently, or?
Yes, they have, and
not Nightwish. We mentioned Nightwish, haven't we?
No, but they sound like Mesuka. They have similar type of. I think that it's always bad to say what somebody sounds and whatever, but they actually, to me, they do kind of like. I'm trying to open up my other phone here, so that I check out the band's name.
There's. Sure I understand your perspective. You got it?
Sorry?
I understand your perspective, because what happened to me was I thought too that there was. I thought. But it's anyway. I thought there was bugger all happening in metal too, and then when I started to do the journalism stuff in late 2016, early 2017, and I started to get connected with a lot of new bands. I think the problem that some very good new bands have, because they're definitely out there, it's just cutting through the noise on the internet. It's almost, I will say, it's almost impossible to be heard unless something has to happen. There's there's a band from the United States called Amur, who I think are very good. They've been around a while, but they've got a good guitarist called Josh Travis, who basically is making his guitar sound a bit like computer game music. So there's that innovation that's happening, and that's the key thing. I'm not much of a nostalgia freak, as you know, you can probably tell with my comments about Metallica and to a lesser extent Iron Maiden. But I think there's definitely got to be an innovative perspective. Otherwise, things just end up repeating themselves, and that's why the rival sons thing. And what's that band that sounds like Greta Van Fleet? Like
Don't know that.
No, you should check. They basically sound like Led Zeppelin 3. They've just got that sound down pat. But I mean, look, if I want to listen to Led Zeppelin 3, guess what I'll listen to? I don't really need to listen to a new band to hear that. And so but that's just people's listening habits and bands sort of figuring out what they can do to get heard. But there's quite a few out there, man. There's like this Plague Organ that I interviewed. They're from Holland, these two lads. So there's stuff there. It's just hidden, man. But I get all of the emails from the record companies and stuff too. So I'm at a distinct advantage, I suppose. And that's one of the key reasons I do the micro reviews that I do, is because I'm trying to spread awareness of new music. So just to get the cut through and also get the hype, because all of the stuff now that's hyped is just shit. It's a false hype. It's not for real. It's not interesting music. A lot of the stuff that gets a bit of a buzz at the moment, they've just got a good marketing team around them. Whereas in years gone by, with you always had magazines, and like I remember when I first heard Cradle of Filth, for example. I've just been writing their entry in my book, and first time I'd ever heard a black metal band thread new wave of British heavy metal into their sound. And so of course that was a revolution. That was revolutionary because they were innovating. And I think that's extremely important with new music too. If it sounds like the old stuff, I don't see the point.
Well, it will be interesting what you think about my new music, because it is different.
Yeah, well, I think but you've got a skin in the game in that you are a pioneer, and that you were around in the very beginning phases of it all, and your image was on point too. We haven't spoken about that yet, but you definitely had your own vibe and your own image there, and it did set you apart, didn't it, from the other bands that you were potentially playing with or touring with or what have you? Because the use of the face paint and the ankh, is it not the ankh symbol, the Eye of Horus, which is synonymous with the group. Yeah. So you got the Eye of Horus, which is synonymous with the group, and there's a few things there.
Yeah, and it's kind of I think, like I said earlier, that was quite important for because you have to remember that Alice Cooper has been one of my big influences, and he's kind of like, because he already back then was talking about that Alice Cooper is it's just like a stage character, that it's not him. He just becomes him, her, whatever it is, on stage. So that was like with the Sarcofagus, that was the same thing, that whatever we did was just for the show. It was just to make it, something special. So it wasn't that we were like that. It wasn't our, like I said, that we were kind of ahead of time, that we didn't live the life that we looked. So in a way, so I've now forgotten how we got into this, but yes. So
the look. The look. Yeah, I know what you're saying, because I've always there was a few years there I had it long hair, down to here sort of thing. But I don't know how people get by with it, because I noticed that I started to have people like not serve me in queue, in shops and stuff. Like, I've got to say, I was treated like a leper at times. I tell you what, I especially had felt it when I went to the United States and I had long hair. There were a few hairy moments, I've got to say. Like, this is back when, in the year 2000, when metal was not popular. So walking around and having long hair, I just found that people were either rude or they wouldn't talk to me. The only people I found that I kind of got along with, to be completely frank, were the Latinos and the Hispanics that were into metal in Los Angeles. Because I was going into bars and just trying to play pool and stuff, and these were guys that were just sort of hanging out, and I was able to talk to them, but other people wouldn't. So I think I learned a lot from that, in that I thought, well, I always had a job. This is the first time in my life I haven't been 24 9 to 5 working, so to speak, even though I worked a lot longer than that. But I've looked like this, like what you're saying now, for a long time too, and I think some people also, does this happen for you? They look at me, and with all of the Scars and Guitars podcast, and
it's kind of funny that bizarrely, like when, like 1979, 1980, 1981, long hair was already it's kind of like in Finland it was out of fashion.
Oh yeah.
I think it went somewhere 70s, because I remember that when I was in school I had long hair, and I was the only one in class that had long hair.
Wow.
And it was kind of like it was kind of like the old Finnish saying without those fucking long haired hippies. So we were kind of made into hippies if we had long hair. So yeah, but of course, but that's kind of with the band that was good, because like there was all these stories, weird stories about the band, that we are kind of like in cahoots with the Satan, and which the band has nothing to do with kind of like, you know, any of that. I might have been interested in the kind of like anybody would be, but the band had nothing to do with any kind of Satanism or anything. But that has been tied into the band because of the look. Because people just kind of automatically, if you have black leather and that, then you are kind of like into Satan, and which is kind of silly. But yeah, and I think that what for me is quite tiring nowadays is that, because you see a lot of the new bands and their photos, and it's all the same stuff. It's like where you are looking gloomy in a kind of like, you know, gothic environment, and it's done so many times. It really is kind of like boring. I know it's not boring for the young kids, because of course they have never seen it, but I've seen it for, I don't know, 40 years. So it's a bit kind of like, it's just repeat. There's very little any new ideas. It's just kind of like, you know, I don't know.
That's why I got so excited when Deaf Heaven came out, because they just look like normal guys too. They look like normal guys that came from a day job or what have you. They're pretty clean cut looking guys, actually, these guys in Deaf Heaven, but they're a black metal band effectively. They just don't, but they have none of the imagery. In fact, their Sunbather, if you've ever seen that LP, that's pink, the album cover, and it's meant to represent somebody who's looking at the sun and closing their eyes. You know, that color that comes through from behind your eyelid when you got your eyes closed and you're in the presence of the sun. And they have this extraordinary story around it. And mate, you see them live, they're probably one of the most intense bands that I've ever seen. And I'm with you, actually. I've never subscribed to the theory that you need to have this image to play heavy metal. It's I think it's something that's in the heart. You know, it's part of your spirit. It's part of your soul. It's who you are. And I know you can see what I look like. It's clearly how I feel, how I live my life around it.
But it is kind of, it still is that if you have a band, the packaging is quite important. Like, you know, you have to have a style. You can kind of be the alternative, that you look like just like normal, but people are expecting the band to be cool and have kind of like whatever the cool is. So in a way, I kind of, it's a bit like you can sell, like, you know, sell kind of like washing powder in a white box without labels, and it's cheaper, but still people go for the names and design. So it's a bit, I think bands should think about how they look like and what it's just like, I just, my point is more like that there's other looks than the same metal look that has been done to death. And so because I don't know. Like I said, that for Sarcofagus, the look was very important in the 80s. It helped a lot to kind of like get things done, and because we had quite kind of like, you know, we were paid well in Finland when we were kicking, because we had the show. We had, like, you know, smoke and pyros and flame throwing guitars and people came to see us because of that. So we played to kind of like full houses everywhere except for the East Finland, but like in West, wherever we went, it was packed.
Mhm.
And it wasn't that they had been buying our albums or listening to our music. They came to see us because we were kind of like, there was a joke about that we are the band that eat rats. I don't know where it came from, but
What? Yeah, what's that mean though?
no,
What's
it's
the quote
just kind of like, remember there was a story about Ozzy Osbourne with the band.
Yeah.
That so we had a rat, and I don't like. I remember when we were in some petrol station somewhere, and on the way somewhere, and there was this kind of like farmer-looking guy coming to us and asking us, "So are you the guys who eat rats?" and that's kind of like, yes, of course we are. But so it is kind of like for the band, the image was important. It did kind of widen, especially with the kicking.
Yeah,
It widened kind of like audience. So otherwise, we would not necessarily have had, when we kicked, that kind of big success with it, because like I said, that wherever we went, we had full house. So and we didn't kick for a long time. We actually, because I got fed up with it also, because in Finland the distances are very long. So you would have to be working the week to have
Same
money to do things with the band. And and then you are sitting in the bus and there's nothing to do for 8 hours to get somewhere. And then you have the gig, then you have another 8 hours to go to another gig, and then again back home. And it's just kind of like, I loved being on stage, but I just hated the bus trips because it was nothing to do. And it's just kind of like, it was boring. And it's kind of like 2010 when we had the gigs, and I actually, I was, because it was great fun to be on stage, and I really loved it, and I thought that we could kind of, now we have, the set and everything, we could kind of continue, and so I did call all the big venues in Finland, and of course, because of the band, I got all of them booked, like so that we had actually, that we could have continued in kind of couple of months. But the problem was that the kind of the gig fees, because like in Finland there's so many metal events. Back then, we're talking 2010, that was the height of the Finnish metal. After that, it's gone quite fast down, and that even if they know that we would kind of pull people in, because kind of like a cult band that hasn't been on stage for 30 years, so but they still couldn't kind of like, pay decent. I'm talking about decent salaries in a way that probably a lot of bands would have been happy with that money, but considering the two of us were from here, from England, and the rest of the band, most of them are professional musicians, so they are anyway touring. So organizing all this, it has to kind of be paying enough. That if I don't do films and I go to Finland for a couple of months or 3 months to kind of like, gig around, it has to make sense money-wise. It's just kind of like, when you are young, it doesn't matter. But when you are kind of like older, of course, it has to kind of make sense. So I had to cancel everything because I realized that. And also the other thing was that what I was also quite reluctant about was that because Sarcofagus had the image, in the early image that is in kind of the videos and people who might have seen us remember the song type of thing. It wasn't in the modern day things. It wasn't like extraordinarily fantastic, but it was a song. We had stuff, and it was interesting. So in a way, I also kind of thought that it's better to leave the band as is than go to gigs if it doesn't make proper like financial sense. That you can do, because then we would have been kicking without anything, because we would need to take the salary out. We wouldn't have money for the pyros and all kind of things and I, because that's how the band is seen. So it's kind of better that we don't go and ruin it by being kind of like, just like any other band.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, make it a special
and you
event.
cannot like, when you are kind of like, well, that was 10 years ago, so I was about 50. So you kind of feel more conscious about like, should you put kind of like face paint on and
Yeah, sure.
that you have to have a new style. You cannot go back into that type of look. You have to have something else that, otherwise it just looks silly. We have a lot of American examples of that, how silly they look when they try to look like they were 20 years ago. So
I
yes.
can't stand that retro look. Yeah, no, it's
yeah, it is. But this is a kind of also, I think that's a problem that it could be again that a lot of people would like to be like you were, that they and that's what I'm saying, that the expectations are very bizarre with the fans. So in a way, like, that was again the time that I decided that, because we have had quite a lot of kind of requests for festivals and stuff like that.
Okay.
But it's again, if there isn't like other gigs, it doesn't make any sense. It's just it's pointless, and we could do it, but it wouldn't. Sometimes it's better to leave something be. And in that way, I think that Sarcophagus kind of like, it could have ended earlier. That it kind of has run its course. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't be kind of like working together with the guys and so there isn't any kind of hard feelings. I think it's the opposite. That I think that what has been really good with the Sarcophagus reunion is that we have all got together and have had quite a great time together. And like with the original singer Hannu, when we were young, we were so different, and we both were kind of like, the leaders of the band. And you can only have one leader, and I was, of course, the one who made songs, and I got the record deals and everything. So I was like naturally the leader. So we went different ways, and we didn't went different ways in a kind of like let's stay friends. We were very kind of like, I think it took like, because I remember hearing something that Hannu had said something about what I've been doing, and it wasn't very pleasant. But when we met again in 2008, it's just kind of like, it's all gone. It's like, that you realize that was just young men's stupidity kind of being, and then when you're kind of older, it's just like great times. So that's been brilliant, that it has kind of reunited us in a way that we have all seen that what we have become doing all this kind of 30 years or 25 years, 2008, 28 years. So that's quite nice, So it's in a way, the whole Sarcophagus thing, it's when I was putting together the website, because I was trying to put there the history for people.
Yeah, you've done a good job with that, by the way.
A lot of photos. Sorry?
You've done a good job with that, by the way.
But it was quite heavy to do it, because it was taking you back again and remembering the things. And so it was quite bizarrely, because I'm quite relieved that I don't have to think about Sarcophagus anymore, because it's always in the back of your mind, because you think that like that was supposed to be the next album, and I did songs for it, and they actually have recorded songs for it, but it's kind of like, it's bittersweet, the right word for it, that it's kind of like, there's all the nice memories, because it was nice, but then again, it's kind of like, it's something that you want to kind of push away, not forget, but kind of like take it out of your headspace.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's no longer a burden. Yeah, I mean, these things.
And I'm really happy with the new songs. I'm sorry, because I will play you the minute that we are ready with it, because we have ready songs. We have quite a lot of songs.
No, I understand. You want to keep it under wraps, so
but,
yeah, I get
but it's kind of like, and it is the music is kind of what I've always wanted to do, because it's still like, if we started with the Egypt, that I've always been interested in different cultures and different, or kind of like, the traditional music and stuff like that. So this is now kind of like blending things from, like I said, working with the Siberians. We have done the Siberian folk song, which is kind of like an area that the language is related to Finnish language. So that's kind of, so in a way of doing traditional music, but not traditionally, like in a new take of it. So so there is still the heavy elements, and because that's part of me, but there's also, like yesterday I spent actually 2 days trying to figure a new type of folk instrument. And so I'll be playing guitars with bows and doing all kind
intriguing.
of weird stuff. Well, it's kind of like, there's not that many people that have heard it, but the reaction has been very good. So I'm quite looking forward to it. And also because it will combine, it's also film. It's everything. So it's kind of like a audio-visual thing. And it's also that, yes, and it's also a thing that can be taken to a tour, world tour. And it's kind of like, it will be done in a way that it's kind of COVID-proof, that we don't have to have mega big venues to do it. So it's quite nicely thought thing. It actually, the whole thing started 2007, and then it was put on ice because it was originally a TV series, TV program, but it was too weird. Everybody liked it, but nobody knew what it is. Okay. So TV people don't buy anything that they cannot put in a slot.
No, they don't.
So this is kind of like but I'm saying that this is something that comes from way back, and in a way, one important part of it is that, like we were talking about the Korpiklan and how it was quite heavy and complicated and not very profitable and all this stuff. But one good thing was that I met Tuomas, the violin player in Korpiklan. And it turns out that we have very similar view of things, what we want to do, despite being totally different type of music to people. So he's on these songs and so it is quite, I've met quite a lot of people that are kind of like suddenly everything is kind of falling into places. That you have a group of people that are like-minded, and it works. So it's quite interesting. But like I said, it's always stupid to talk about something that I cannot, because like, don't want to let the cat out of the bag too early.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I've got to think seriously about leaving the comments in about writing Peter Sandoval's biography. So I know what you're saying. Because I don't think it can hurt to sort of leave it out there. But you never know. It's just, you just don't want something to be blown up, and then your opportunity to be blown. To blow an opportunity. But then I think, I'm sharing it because I'm excited about it, not because I want to blow the opportunity either. So no, but I understand your perspective on these things. And do you have an anticipated time frame for when it will be completed and the public get access to it?
Well, I do hope that it will be in a month or two that we can start to kind of like get samples out, and we have one video and because there's also this we will be looking funding for this. So that's why there's a part of me that don't want to kind of like, put it out too much too early, because we want to see how that goes. And
so you're talking about Patreon or GoFundMe or something?
Well, there's a lot of, this is like good in Finland and in EU, is that there's a lot of, because this project is kind of like something that falls into the kind of art culture. So it's because it's not metal. It's
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So there is kind of probability of getting funding for it, because it actually involves, the the kind of like like the tribe in Siberia and all.
Yeah.
So so it's kind of like so it is. Yes, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's got
Which I love because it's very challenging. The music that I've been doing, I've never worked so long with one song. That they all are, because I'm kind of like, I started it so that I didn't want to use heavy metal guitars at all.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm actually working on a song that was the first song that I did, which is the Siberian one. And I've kind of like, with the newer songs that I've done, I've realized that it's wrong for me not to use metal guitars or things, because I was just thinking that I don't want to use things that I've done before, which is wrong, because of course I have to use whatever is me and what's my way of expressing myself. So in a way, I'm redoing some of the old songs now because I was going too different way, which is fine. They work, but it's still, I think they work better after what I've been doing now.
Yeah.
So and I've loved the idea that I like guitar playing. I'm playing it differently. So like I said, that with the bow and all kind of, because like guitar, I've played guitar for a long time that it's also quite boring to play a normal solo. It's like you've done it a million times, and so it's a bit kind of like looking for old things, but in a new way.
Yeah.
So it is
kind
of, because that's kind of like, I think that, but what, like with the core values, which is a very different, but it's not really, if you know me, it's not that different.
Yeah,
it might sound different, but of course there's a long time between the motor birds and core values, but you can still, I hope, see and hear that it's me. And some of the kind of like, like some of the diehard fans, I know that they liked it, because you see the comments and people tell you and so on, so that it wasn't lost in some of the diehard people, that it is, if you just open your eyes a little bit, it is like everything moves on. So if there's been 20 years between something, it changes. So it's not like that I have gone totally different way.
So, you haven't sold out.
This gets very complicated.
Hey, so just with Sarcofagus then, and the opportunity for people listening to support you is to go to your website and purchase the T-shirt and the poster. Is that correct?
Yeah, poster. Yeah, and then there's the Core Values album. It's not on the main page, but there's a link to it, and of course, Core Values is on all the digital platforms. So
okay, so
that's a kind of, for me, that's an album that I think there could be quite few people who would like it if they would just listen to it. So
give it a chance.
It's a bit album that has kind of fallen kind of between the cracks in the time, because I didn't have the time when it came out and all that. So but I think it is a good album because it's different again. Like, it was something that I wanted to do. It was the kind of like, going into that type of screaming guitars and mixture with 80s kind of, or 70s Hammonds and stuff. So it's all there.
Yeah, nice looking website, as I said, mate. It's easy to navigate. I just found, so it's the T-shirt and the poster are staring straight at me, and of course up the top you've got Go to Core Values page 2020.
Yeah.
And you've also
because the old site is, unfortunately, I cannot edit it anymore because the software that I use for it is long gone.
Oh right. So sarcophagus.com. Don't go there.
No. Yeah, no. I built pages in front of the old site.
Oh, okay.
So basically, so the entering page for sarcophagus.com is what you see in the post.
Oh yeah, I'm interacting with it easily enough. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So basically, it is kind of. But what I'm saying that the old site remains as it is, because I would otherwise need to rebuild it and there's hell of a lot of pages because there is the history. There's kind of like my guitar page about guitars that I have had. So there's a lot of stuff. So I don't have the energy to kind of update, and I don't think that I need to, because it will remain there, hopefully not forever, but long time.
Yeah, you've done far more than I would do on a website. I've got to be honest with you, because I got to be honest. At this point, I don't see a lot of point in a lot of websites, and the reason I don't is because social media is just so complete these days. Like Facebook, with the opportunity to have buy now and all of the links, and like PayPal, it's all set up for social media. So it's nice to see the effort that you've gone to with it, but is it that's a question for you then? So with the T-shirt and the like, have you got to go to the website to purchase that, or can you do it over Facebook? Have you got a link there on Facebook that?
No, no. There's just a link to the sarcofagus.com, because for me, yes, like the marketing and everything has been my life, but with the band, I haven't had the energy. I see that the website it actually has quite a lot of hits per month. So I would argue that it's more important than the Facebook sarcophagus page.
That's where your fans get you. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that because it is quite big numbers every month that people go there. So, and I think that it's nice because it's a bit like, it's the history. It's it's like the book of the band. So where the social media is changing constantly, and you have to kind of be putting new pictures and doing this and that, and it's more kind of scattered and random. Whereas the website is like an information center that you go, and there's what you want to know is there. The photos, everything, they are all in. So I think it's a bit, I don't see Facebook like, it's important, but I don't see it as exceedingly important. I think it's losing the value of it. Don't know.
Yeah, I think you might be onto
something that I don't have the energy. I did it with the Korpiklan, the Instagram, but it just,
there wasn't the return
like I said,
for you.
I do it if I need to do it for work, but I don't the social media. Otherwise, I'm not really like my Facebook. I don't tell about if I have sore toe or something, that I don't say anything really, except that if it's about the band, or I post some photos of, because we live in a very beautiful part of the country, so I post like nature pictures without any comments. So, but I don't live through I do follow Facebook, and there's a lot of friends and people that you don't see, that you can kind of like see what's happening. But I'm not really a social media person, considering that it's part of my profession. So
no, we share that. Don't worry. I'm picking up. It's something that I've done. I've recently graduated from uni. It was only in my conferral date was 21st of October, I think it was, last year. And two of the subjects I did were heavily involved in. They were social media subjects. Three of them were actually, and it was probably through that process I realized that we were the key is the algorithms that are in social media. Unless this is an absolute fact, okay? This is absolutely true. If you're not paying to boost posts and giving Facebook revenue, they will throttle you. Meaning that you're if you've got 500, I've got about 500 or 600 people who like my Facebook page, my Scars and Guitars one, and I can see if I put up a post, it's only reaching like 80 people or what have you. Like it's not, and I get 3 or 4. Like I just don't put any energy or effort into it. So I feel you. Don't worry, I'm on the same boat myself. But which is one of the key reasons I wanted to go into ghostwriting, because I'm terrible self promoter. I couldn't be bothered. Doing it. I prefer to work. And you sound like
it's a bit kind of like promoting yourself is very, very kind of complicated, because it's not natural. Like when we were talking about that you do everything yourself. That's different if you kind of like make the music yourself. But then if you also promote it, I've been doing that, but it's quite heavy and it's not pleasant. So it's not, that's the part that I least want to do. But then again, if I promote somebody else, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it is, it is something that should be done by somebody else. I think that's the thing. So
yeah, I'm hearing you. Yeah,
but I think that there was with the Korpiklani, there was a discussion about because I think they had like 500,000 Facebook followers. That what was the ultimate? I think the best was it 100,000. So so there is the kind of like I think I was talking with somebody else about it, but it's quite small percentage that if you have like 500,000 million, that how many actually see your post, because like you said that the Facebook is limiting it, and then kind of like, because I've occasionally, like I think that with the post I paid them like 16 quid to get, was it like 3,000 or 4,000 people reach. Okay. And you kind of think that who does it really reach? Is it really kind of like that sophisticated that they could actually find people that it, because I don't think that it ever has, whenever I've been putting some money into it, I've never seen any kind of point in it. It doesn't do anything. So in a way, like that's why I say that the Facebook, that you can have big numbers, but it really doesn't do anything. Like I always thought that Twitter is most likely the best of them, because if you do it right, you can reach hell of a lot of people, and you can find people who like what you are selling. And then you can kind of like,
yeah, Twitter. I find Twitter to be the absolute pits, just of cesspit, and
Twitter kind of changed, but because I started to use it with the Promised Land of Heavy Metal, and I still have, I think, 35,000 Twitter followers. But what I'm doing is that, because in the olden days, like I'm talking about 10 years ago, you could mass follow people, that you could have like kind of like a criteria that like metal, heavy metal.
Yeah, and you'd follow all of those
find the people, and then you automatically follow like 100 people a day that follow back you, then maybe. So you could, that was the time when you could actually like really use it as a direct marketing tool. But then they started to kind of like take away this because they couldn't make money out of it. And but there is still like for example, my Twitter is tweeting all the time, but I haven't been on Twitter like, I don't know, months, because I have like a database that sends out tweets every few hours.
Yeah.
So there's like 180 tweets, and then there's different type of things. So it's probably tweeting about the Korpiklani still. I should take it off, but like, so in a way it looks like I'm there, but I'm not really. And it is kind of, I think that Twitter in that way is, I know people are talking about Instagram, that's really good. And but Twitter was brilliant because, and you can still do it automated. So you just create list of tweets to interest people, and then you put the kind of whatever you are selling in between. And that's how you keep people still wanting to see your tweets, because it keeps them interested.
I just find that I've sort of hinted at it, but it's so left-leaning Twitter, and it's so politically correct.
I don't know anything about the politics, so I think that the mechanism.
The problem with the mechanism, though, too, is if you're talking about things they don't want you to talk about, they'll throttle you again, and so you won't reach the intended audience. I'm on your Twitter page now, and you certainly got 19,000 followers. They're all legit too, are they? They're real people, are they? Not bots or anything. You didn't have to pay to get that audience. That's just people who naturally gravitated toward you.
Yeah.
I got to say, I gave up with it.
I've kind of given up with it, because, like I said, I haven't been there. I've been there for months, and it's just been kind of tweeting whatever I needed to do.
I can see the tweets going out. I can see them going out. There was one 2 hours ago about some film quote, I think it was.
There's a promised land of heavy metal, because there's a lot of quotes from the Finnish musicians. So
yeah, Ville Valu, I think his name is. Yeah, from him. Yeah, heavy metal genre has so many subgenres, but it's all about the heaviness and the mood of the music. He's right. There you go.
Yeah. So he's a very nice guy. Ville.
Well, I've spoken to Tony from Sonata Arctica. You've quoted him.
Yeah, he's also a very nice guy. Yeah.
And Thomas from Korpiklani is the bloke that I interviewed. We had a chat about him last time.
Yes.
So I've spoken to quite a few Finnish musicians now. Olli-Pekka Lane from Amorphous is another one.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
He's a nice guy.
I've met him, but yeah.
Yeah, he's
what I kind of like, my experience of Amorphous is that they are very nice, kind of like normal people. So yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I don't know if that's a compliment, that actually, like, they are very nice, creative people.
They are indeed.
Normal is a word that we should never use. Yes, I know. I don't want to be normal.
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying, but I know what you're saying.
I think that's
they're courteous and respectful, I think, is your point, and I feel that way too. It's there's very few. The only person in heavy metal that I've spoken to that I thought was a bit of a dickhead was Rex Brown from Pantera, and I got to tell you, it broke my heart, because as a bass player, he was one of my bass icons when I was a kid, listening to those records. And wondering, because he's very similar to the bassist who I could name any other day, except I can't name him now, from Jimi Hendrix, and that he didn't so much play rhythm, he just sort of steered the music, and Rex has got I've got to say, Rex has got not a great reputation out there amongst journalists, because he can yell, he gets very angry, you can feel it when you talk to him. He's And I'm writing about that in my book. I wrote about the exchanges that I had with him, and I share what happened. I prepared a bit of a monologue just praising him for his bass playing in Pantera and how it revolutionized heavy metal bass playing, because a lot of those guys, I play with my fingers, you see, but a lot of those guys who play with a pick, they just sort of follow the guitar. They're not melodic. They're not playing their own lines. They're not creative. And I had an opening statement praising him for that, and I got about maybe 5 seconds into what would have been 30 seconds, and he says, and he's that accent that he's got, I won't put it on because I'll fail dismally at it, but it was something like, if this is going to be another heavy metal interview, I don't want to fucking do it. And I was like, well, you're just in one of the most important heavy metal bands of all time, but what have you, and then he said,
but he probably has done it so many times. That's kind of like,
I think so, but then I spoke to Phil Anselmo, and he's a champion. He's just a gracious, and he's had his fair share of, he's been pillared in the media over what happened at Dime Bash, those few years ago. But honestly, I can honestly tell you, in almost now, it's, in terms of the podcast, I'm up to, I can tell you how many interviews that are posted on the podcast. It's something like 530, but I've done about 600 interviews overall, because I did about 70 interviews or so before I started the podcast. And that's the only time it's ever happened. So with all of these great, big, heavy metal artists, like, these, but there's relevant heavy metal artists that are touring the world and stuff, like Amorphous and Korpiklani. They've all been great. There's just that one interaction that I had, and I was far from alone, by the way. The guys in the classic metal show had a bad interaction with him as well, I think they were saying. So it's just that one out of almost 600 I find is an incredible statistic, in our little corner of the world with what we do here with heavy rock and heavy metal and stuff. It's we all tend to be very polite, and we care about each other's what each other are doing. That's certainly always been my experience. The business, you dealt with the business, though. I haven't dealt with that yet.
I think that there's the kind of like, because this is like when I did the Promised Land of Heavy Metal, because then I met a hell of a lot of people, and I think what has changed from the kind of like, the old days is that the whole thing is more business-like. So most of the people who are doing it professionally, they know that they have to do it right. And it's so they are more, there isn't that type of madness that 80s had. So you probably still get, if you have like, some of the old school people that they might be, like you said about the Pantera guy, that they just say what they think and they don't have that type of, whereas like if you think about like Amorphis, I remember I interviewed them for the Promised Land. No, after that, because that was for the year. And it was about how the whole thing, how the responsibility of it. And they were talking about it, how many people rely on them and they feel that they have the responsibility of keeping them going. And the way they were talking, it was very nice. And it was also like, that it was, if you would talk to a normal business, the boss might not be talking nicely about that. It would be thinking about the profits and things. So even if you take it as a business, it seemed to be very nice and friendly and well-run business. And I think that's the kind of key of it, that it all has changed, so that you don't really. I don't think that I met anybody for filming the Promised Land of Heavy Metal that would have been a dickhead. I think everybody was just nice, and there was a guy from Carcass, Walker, Jeff Walker, and he was absolutely lovely guy and really funny person. And I interviewed also the guy from the Dimmu Borgir,
Salinos or
Copperrood. I think his name was Copperrood or something.
Oh, I think it might be. Is he the guitarist or the singer?
I'm not sure, because I'm not a big Dimmu Borgir fan. So
is he bald, or has he bald or got long hair?
No, long hair. Yeah.
He'd be the singer. That'd be Shagrath. I think I don't know what his real name is.
But because, like I said, I'm not expert on Dimmu Borgir. So when that was sorted, the interview, we met in Tuska Festival in Helsinki, and when he came, and I kind of knew the look of Dimmu Borgir, and I thought, this guy cannot be in that band, because he was so nice and friendly and, kind of like completely the opposite that I was expecting. Yeah. So the part of the interview, I was thinking, is this the right guy now? That type of kind of that. Has there been some kind of mix-up with this? Then he started to talk about Britney Spears, and I like Britney Spears. I think that she's a very strange figure in the music
there's a lot of interesting
and
things.
It's quite sad story and like kind of that type of, but it was so funny that he started to talk about Britney Spears and I was kind of like, this is very bizarre, but yes, so that was a kind of like good example of it. It has. Yeah,
I've had my daughter.
Maybe the music has lost the kind of like the madness of trashing the hotel rooms and.
I just think we're down to earth. I just think like you're a businessman, right? Meaning that you understand that if you're nice to people, the more chances of people being invited into what you do. I'll never forget.
It does sometimes work that if you are artist, that if you are kind of like in people's face and aggressive, that somehow people think that that's right, that's how it should be. But I don't think that with the musicians it works. I think it works with painters and like I have a good friend of mine who is a painter, and he's funny because he's that I get type of guy, and everybody likes him because I think that it's exactly how they want the painter to be. He shouldn't be like a banker. He has to be a bit, and it was like even with the TV commercial business that I did, that you had to look different from the people that you were meeting, the business people, because they expected you to look creative. So it's kind of like I think there is certain expectations, but I think that with the music it is, because for everybody it's a business, and that if you don't behave yourself, you don't have the gig next time in a place. And that was the 80s or 70s or whatever, that the bad behavior and madness was part of the being a rock star. I don't
like
think
Keith
that
Moon and the Who. Yeah, that hasn't been done in like 45 years or something. It's just that is. I think. Yeah, it's look. I've met so many. Look, in what I do too is I go to the gigs and I review the gigs, but I'll meet the band afterwards. And I've literally. I was embarrassed, to be honest with you, because the show promoter, I think, was or the tour manager might have been just new at his job. But as soon as Corrosion of Conformity came off stage, they were literally wiping themselves down after coming off stage, and he put me into the dressing room with them, and I said, "I'm so sorry, guys. I wanted to meet you, but I was the only one there." And they were fantastic guys, all of these guys. And, we had a genuine conversation. They wanted to know about where they had some time off and they wanted to go up to the Sunshine Coast, which is where the great beaches are, and hang out there for a little bit. But that, and the guys in Metal Church, I think I mentioned Kurt from Metal Church last time, you meet these guys, and I haven't met a dickhead yet. I hope it, I hope it doesn't happen, but if it happens, it happens. But I just think with metal, there's definitely a community and a brotherhood with it. And I noticed that fans aren't too nice to each other. Okay. So I do notice that on those stupid Facebook, those metal voice or whatever they might, insert particular metal page here, and someone says that they do like Metallica and someone says that they don't, and they go at each other. And
I know.
Guys, it's the equivalent to a dog licking its own balls. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, but because I'm part of some of the kind of like metal Facebook discussion groups. I don't know why. Maybe somebody who was my friend has invited me there, and I thought that it's a good idea to join. And they're the most boring things. It's just kind of like, it's the discussion side. Then they have these arguments that then they have to kind of like post videos where somebody is explaining themselves, and it's just kind of like, what? It's just so silly. But then I think all these kind of hobby things, because I'm kind of into watches, so I'm part of some of the watch collectors Facebook groups, and they are exceedingly silly, because there's exactly that some watches that's okay, but that's not, and and then it's all argument about that, and people asking that, should I buy this watch or that watch, and it's kind of like, buy whatever you want. It's like not.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I'm part of it, but hey ho.
I think I did my first comment on Facebook on a random page in months. Today's Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy's the anniversary of his death. And I think he's the greatest rock and roll frontman of all time, you see. So all of us have.
That was a great band, yeah.
Oh, extraordinary. And I've got to tell you, I've spoken to Scott Gorham, the other guitarist in the band, alongside of Gary Moore, and fantastic, awesome guy. Just some people you meet and they're just so easy to talk to. In these big bands I'm talking about, if anybody had a reason to be sort of bitter and be a dickhead, it'd be him, but he doesn't. He's completely ground down to earth and stuff. And I think I said something like, R.I.P. Phil, best ever, something like that. And I got a couple of likes on it. Oh, that's interesting. People aren't, attacking me for, wishing Phil a good rest in peace, on a rest in peace. But, I mean, that's all there is to it. But I tend to take your attitude, mate, which is that I got to say, like, because, I've only got bugger all Twitter, Facebook and Instagram followers, a couple of hundred on each. But when I do get comments, they're almost, I don't think I've had a negative comment ever, to be honest. Like I've, outside of the band stuff that I mentioned to you earlier, in terms of people who listen, and you get this too, it's wonderful to get comments, emails from people I've got a fellow who listens to the podcast, Steve is his name, he lives in Ireland, and mate, the comments that he sends to me, they're positively life-affirming. They really are. I mean, I don't know Steve, and he's a fellow who listens to the podcast, and they reach out to you, and there's a lot of people that do it. I was mentioning that I got some comments from Latin America before to you, and I think, wow, it's great to and you know this because you've been in a band that has a following, but For me, it's this is new. You know, being able to share these stories with people, and then they find enough value in it to contact me personally. And I do think that's what's great about the community and social media too. I suppose, and podcasting's a part of that too. That new media thing.
But that was the kind of like, remember we were talking last time that with the crowdfunding of the Korpiklaani, that the crowdfunders were absolutely crucial support. Not like the money was okay. Well, it wasn't really okay, but it was important. I'm not dissing that, but it was their moral support that they were behind it. And when it felt like, that what the hell am I doing this? Then you get this very well thought email from, there was a German called Marian, I think her name. And she was really kind of like intelligently going through things and actually kind of like helping me in processing what I'm doing. So that's kind of like yes, you do get that type of when you actually have people who have something to say and who are constructive, and then it's brilliant. But of course the problem is that a lot of the people are in the social media are not. They are just looking for a fight and venting their frustrations and whatever. So that's the kind of like, but it is sometimes interesting to kind of follow some of the discussions about things, and because some of it is quite bizarre, but like that, and I think for me it's the kind of like straight contact which might come through like the crowdfunding or somebody emailing or whatever band stuff, but I think that the like Facebook and all these are also killing the sensible people's reactions, because if you are a sensible person and you want to say something nice, and then there's 10 other people coming with negative stuff, and then the people who are sensitive, they stay away from it.
Correct.
So it becomes kind of like a place for the angry people, and that's kind of like the coronavirus is a good example. I don't really usually kick people out of my Facebook friends, but I just had to do some people that I've known quite a long time and have actually met them, because their posting was just so winding me up that, and I actually start to comment, which is I usually never do, and then I realized this is not that. Why would I? Because part of you kind of cares about the person, thinking that when you know the person, that you try to kind of maybe somehow point something else out to them, but it's totally pointless. And it's like my mother said when I was a kid, she said that Kimmo, it's totally pointless to argue with idiots, and that is true. So it actually completely pointless to comment any negative people, because they just remain negative. Nothing changes them. They just feed from your input.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, it's horrible. Yeah, and it's I tell you where I find it. Look, music is one thing, but where it's far worse is on sports pages. So I follow a few teams, and then you get opposition supporters on there. So we in Australian rugby doesn't go that well anymore. We used to be quite a good rugby playing nation though. But if you go to the Wallabies website, that's the national team. There's all these bloody New Zealanders commenting and heaping shit on the Wallabies and the Wallabies fans, and it's like, like, I mean, for starters, fuck off. But what the hell? Why
the old village fight thing, like you have villages and then they have a fight somewhere.
And they say, like when they're talking about the All Blacks, they say we did well, like they're on the field, like they're part of the team, like we beat you, like, oh really? Oh, really? How many? How was the training for the game that you obviously played in then? So I've turned off a lot of sport, following a lot of sports pages because of that, because it does, and the coronavirus thing too, the COVID thing too. It was it just gets to a point where it's like, I don't need you to post anything or make a comment on anything. It's not enlightening. If it's an opinion, there's no enlightenment. Like, if you can, the only thing that I would listen to somebody is if they could tell us when rapid testing was going to get rolled out so that the economy could start spooling up again. Because I know in the US it's going to be, I'm not I'm not over there. We're not over there, of course, but places like California, you know that a lot of people are going to lose their businesses, restaurateurs and retail outlets and mum and dad places and stuff, and that's a concern for anybody. You want to limit human suffering, not extend it, and so that'd be the only time I'd probably tune into something. But overall, I think I've just switched everything off on that regard.
I kind of like when this whole thing started, I stopped reading the news or listening to news, and now I've been limiting still. I check it once a day, but it's just because there isn't. It's pointless. It's just like nothing changes. If you have a week without watching the news, you realize that it doesn't really affect your life if you don't follow the news. So it just gives you more anxiety and whatever if you're going to follow all the kind of somebody saying something, and then it's put out as this is the expert, and we don't know if it's an expert or if it's just a person commenting. And
I think the sign that they're not an expert is that they're commenting. I think that's generally the sign. That's usually how I take it. You know what I do now though? I leave. This is my bedroom's on the other side of this. I leave. I'm taking to leave the phone here, and I read. I subscribe to the New Yorker because I get a lot of value. Some of the stories the content isn't great, but the way that these writers write is beautiful, and I get a lot of inspiration from it. So I read magazines and the Kindle book before I go to bed. I don't look at the phone now. And I find that's helped. And I tend to find that when you put the phone down, so really you're looking at the phone for social media and maybe emails, in my case, because I get a lot of emails today.
I play games also.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, I signed up for the Apple game thing. I've never been a gamer, I've got to confess. I just can't get into it. It doesn't... I actually built in 70s, you remember the ping pong? Yeah.
The two paddles going and a ball.
Yeah.
I actually built a machine like that to play, and so I have had most of the consoles up until the Xbox. Which Xbox? But anyway, when it became that you could have a headset and you could talk to the other gamers, that's when I realized that it's ruining my life, because I might be up all night playing some stupid game, and didn't have a parent to come and switch it off, So I do like games, but I don't have any consoles anymore, because I've been actually thinking about buying a PlayStation, but I haven't, because I still prefer to do what I do with the music. It takes so much time that if I would have something else to distract me, I think I'm adult enough to realize that I should focus on the things that I really want to do and not just kill time. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? I know. I don't have a lot of distractions. I mean, when I say distraction, my main thing, because I've got 2 young daughters, is raising them.
Yeah.
So well over half of my day is spent.
Well, that's like having a game console, isn't it?
Pretty much. But I notice with them that it's these psychopaths in Silicon Valley that invent, these algorithms on these games and stuff like that, because the kids get addicted instantly. They're just they're at it. So we're adults, we've got self-awareness. They don't have any. So they just sit there going like this. And it's like, and then we have to deal with the tantrums afterwards when we take it away, because they're different after that. It's like a drug, man. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like,
it is. Yeah. I know, because I get addicted to games, and that's why I realized that I have to stop it, because it's just getting too much time. So there was, when we were talking about the kind of like people, there was a really good somebody had posted on Facebook saying that in 2019 we avoided negative people. In 2020 we avoided positive people. In 2021 we avoid all people. So I thought that was quite
relate
fun.
To that. I can definitely relate to that. Yeah.
That's what I thought, that it came to my mind that you might like this.
Well, that's it. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series, now broadcasting on YouTube as well. I do have a channel. Check it out, Scars and Guitars, if you are listening via the podcast app, whichever one it might be. That interview subject was Finnish metal icon Kimmo Kuusniemi. Thanks for tuning in.